Back on SportsLine tonight, Steve Layman here with you. We're talking some football. Titans getting set to report to St. Thomas Sports Park next Friday. They are on the field for their first practice on Saturday afternoon, about 2:40. That practice and most of their training camp practices are open to the public at St. Thomas Sports Park. They'll have 13 open training camp practices and all through, I believe, August the 17th is the last one that's open. So a lot of chances to get out there if you're a fan. Can't get into the games, can't get the tickets to get into the game in Nissan Stadium. It's a chance to get out and see these guys up close and personal during training camp. It's also your opportunity over the first couple of weeks to see them before they hit the field for any type of game action. So it's always a good time to get out there at St. Thomas Sports Park and just check out your Titans. See them ahead of the start of the season. They'll get going next Saturday on the field at 2:40 p.m. On the field again on Sunday at 2:40, and then the schedule really varies over the next couple of weeks leading up to the first preseason game in New York against the Jets. Tennessee also reports next weekend. Their first practice of fall camp also a week from Saturday on Rocky Top. Vanderbilt to come following that. Both of these teams at SEC Media Days last week getting set for the start of the season. Tennessee predicted third in the SEC East. Questions about the quarterback position. Will it be Quentin Dormady? Will it be the redshirt freshman Jared Garantano? One of them's going to have to win out the battle in training camp. Butch Jones in no hurry to name his starting quarterback or to declare a winner of that battle. He wants them to compete. He wants every position to compete on this team. But there does seem to be a little bit of a quiet confidence from this new look Tennessee coaching staff in the sense that there was so much expected last year, and they had some very talented players. But I think they wondered about the depth at certain positions, and they were decimated at times last year and throughout the course of the season by injuries. And they just didn't have the depth to back certain guys up at some of those spots. Based off of the guys who played last year and had to contribute and the recruiting that they've done, I think there's a belief now that they're more situated for injuries and depth at these positions. Now, maybe they don't have the established quarterback in Joshua Dobbs or that all-conference type of defensive end and first-round draft pick in Derek Barnett on defense. Some of the stars and leaders aren't there. But I think they believe the overall depth of the football program is improved. And that could be why this Tennessee team maybe surprises people in a good way this fall. Meanwhile, at Vanderbilt, I think Derek Mason also has a quiet confidence in the fact that his team is now a junior-senior team. He heads into year 4. These are his guys. This is his program. No more of this is guys that James Franklin and his staff recruited and Derek Mason is now coaching. This is a coach that has established his coaching staff. After some struggles in year 1, he has his guys in the program. They've recruited better over the past couple of years. They're recruiting very well at the moment, coming off of that Independence Bowl trip last year. And they got that positive reinforcement of everything that you talk about and you say in training camp and during the offseason. Last year, finally, came the positive reinforcement that Vanderbilt won some games, and late in the year they beat Ole Miss, and they win the game against Tennessee, and they go to a bowl game. Those things are rewards for the system. You work so hard all off season and throughout training camp and daily in that grind. And when you don't win like they didn't do in Mason's first 2 seasons on West End, it's a little hard to get the guys to continue to buy in. And to his credit, he continued to change his program. This was a first-time head coach that I think showed that inexperience early on in his time at Vanderbilt. But over the past couple of years has gotten better and better. And I think he's ready for potentially a breakout season with this group. Now, Kyle Shermer has to step up. No more inconsistency from him. He's a veteran now. He's played for a year and a half, essentially, as the quarterback of this team. He's needs to take charge and be good for this team with an improved group of wide receivers. The running backs, I think, are an impressive group. Ralph Webb, obviously, is your all-time leading rusher, back for his senior season. Kari Blasingame, a valuable backup to him. This is a team that I think can have a pretty decent offense if Shermer takes another stride this year, takes a step forward. And Derek Mason's defense, I think, always is going to be good. That's what he does. That is his bread and butter. We saw them last year really step up in some critical situations, and I expect them to be good again on that side of the ball. Vanderbilt, to me, could be a real surprise team in the SEC East because of that experience. Georgia, to me, is the favorite in the SEC East because of what they have there. I really like Jacob Eason, the young quarterback. Florida, after winning last year, they've got to be a confident group. They'll be in the mix. Tennessee's talent, I think, should put them in the mix. A lot of people are talking about Kentucky, and I think they'll be much improved this year. So Vanderbilt gets kind of buried when everybody talks about the SEC East this year. I believe they were 6th in the media projections last week at SEC Media Days, just in front of Missouri. But don't be surprised if Vandy's considerably better than that, to me, because of the veteran leadership and the experience they got going through last year. There's some players in that system now, and there's a belief that the way they're doing things can win games in the SEC based off of how they finished last year. Again, our phone lines are open tonight. 737-7767 is the number. Let's go to Brian. Brian, good evening. You're next up here on SportsLine.
Hey, big guy. So how did the SEC come to be such a powerhouse? I remember, I'm an Illini, and I remember when the Big Ten and the Pac-10 with USC and the ACC with Florida State and Miami. I remember when those guys, Michigan, Ohio State, Washington. What happened to that? And how come the SEC became such power? And what about the big fall of Missouri with all that controversial political junk that came on their campus, and the football team said they're going to walk out, and then they came back, and now they're nothing.
Yeah, it's remarkable. Missouri had such a great run when they came into the conference, Brian. But I think the turmoil on that campus, whether it's the football team itself or just everything else, admissions are way down. They've lost some funding from the state. There's just a lot of mess that has to be sorted out there. But the biggest thing in terms of the football team within the SEC is no more Gary Pinkel. I think Gary Pinkel was one of the most underrated coaches in all of college football, and the job he did at Missouri. First in the Big 12 for a long time. I mean, they won Big 12 titles. They competed for Big 12 championships and played really well for a long time in that conference before coming to the SEC, where then they get to Atlanta for back-to-back SEC championship games and Eastern Division titles. Gary Pinkel, to me, made Missouri. And without him, I don't know. I don't know if Barry Odom or, frankly, anybody else can do that in the SEC right now. This conference, here's the deal. One, you have such a premium focused on football in the South. High school is focused on it. You've got your best athletes playing football in the South. You've got a lot of speed in the South, in Florida and Georgia and Alabama and Texas, which the SEC is starting to get into more of now with the big addition of Texas A&M. So teams are recruiting this area of the country because that's where the talent is. And a lot of these players are willing to stay home. So they're staying home at Southeastern Conference schools. So that's a big part of it. And just the atmosphere. I mean, if you walk on these campuses, it's just different. I like you, I'm a Big Ten guy. That's where I went to school. And look, Big Ten football is fantastic, and I think you're seeing it cyclical right now, and that Urban Meyer won the first playoff at Ohio State. Jim Harbaugh is going to get Michigan rolling in very short order. They were in the the Big Six, the New Year's Six games last year in the Orange Bowl. Penn State seems to be about to turn the corner under James Franklin. Wisconsin's been really good for a while. Michigan State under Mark D'Antonio is rolling. So there's some really good programs there. But when you talk to people around those parts of the country, the schools are great academic institutions, overshadows football at times, and they're from the part of the country that's filled with professional sporting teams in football and basketball and baseball and all of those sort of things. So, you're from Illinois. There's a lot of focus about Chicago sports, the Bears, the Blackhawks, the Cubs, all of those sort of things. It takes away from Illinois and Northwestern. In Michigan, you talk a lot about Detroit sports. It takes a little bit away from Michigan or Michigan State. In Alabama, nothing takes away from Alabama football. And that's part of the reason why it's been so great. And that's the case around the SEC. When you talk about these teams, is the number one game in town in almost all of these places is the college football team. And so it just means so much in the SEC. And these teams have won the arms race in large part because they've built facilities and they've hired coaches and they've paid them massive salaries. And when you hire good coaches and you have good facilities and you have the talent base around you that these Southern schools do, you're going to be pretty good. And the SEC teams certainly have been that way over the past decade or so. Obviously, they won 8 national championships in a certain period of time. Alabama in the national title game last year. But it is cyclical. I think the Big Ten's starting to come back a little bit. We've seen the ACC. Clemson won it last year. Florida State is definitely going to be in the mix this year. They won a title a couple years ago as well. I think Miami's headed in a very strong direction with Mark Richt taking over that program a year ago. So it's cyclical. It works itself out, but the SEC sort of has a stranglehold on college football at the moment.
What about USC and teams like that? I always thought USC was supposed to be one of the greatest teams.
Yeah, USC is a storied franchise. There's no question about it, and they were maybe the team of the 2000s, if you talk about 2000 to 2008 or 9. But the sanctions they got from the NCAA out of recruiting violations and things like that really just decimated that program, Brian. And when Lane Kiffin and then Steve Sarkisian were there, they didn't have their full complement of scholarships. And even when you're USC, when you're out scholarships, it's really hard to compete. They are just now starting to get back to the talent level that you're used to seeing at USC. Clay Helton, it's up to him. Sam Darnold at quarterback, can he get that team back going in the direction it was under Pete Carroll? I think the talent's starting to get back there, so I expect USC to compete for that in the next couple of years. But that's what happened there. They got sanctions from the NCAA that really limited their ability to compete in the Pac-12 and nationally.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
That's what I'm here for. Brian, we appreciate the call. Have a good night. Phone lines are still open. 737-7767 is the number. We'll talk some more football coming up after this break. Hear from Nick Saban, the Alabama head coach, more on some of the off-field stuff in college football. Interesting stuff from the Alabama coach as always. That's on the other side here on SportsLine on News Channel 5+.